You sit at your desk attempting to stay completely still during a meeting. Within 30 seconds, your foot starts tapping a rapid rhythm on the floor. Your toes curl inside your shoes, your jaw tightens without your permission, and your shoulder muscles contract as if bracing for an invisible impact. Have you ever wondered why sitting still feels less like resting and more like holding your breath underwater? This isn't just impatience or nervous energy. Your body is managing a hidden physical engine that never quite drops into neutral. Most people assume that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is entirely mental. A storm of scattered thoughts, forgotten appointments, and lost focus. But your nervous system doesn't draw a line between your mind and your body. Every neurochemical signal in your brain translates directly into physical movement, muscular tension, and bodily posture. What looks like simple restlessness to an outside observer is actually a complex, highly regulated physiological attempt to keep your brain awake. When you look at the brain imaging studies led by neuroscientist Dr. Russell Barkley, a clear pattern emerges regarding executive function and motor control. The prefrontal cortex, which acts as the executive control center of your brain, does not just regulate working memory and decision-making. It also controls motor inhibition. In a neurotypical brain, the neural pathway between the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia acts as an automatic brake system for physical movement. When you decide to sit still, that brake engages smoothly and effortlessly. But in an ADHD brain, that inhibitory circuit operates on a significantly reduced supply of dopamine and norepinephrine. Without sufficient neurotransmitters, the physical brake slips, leaving your motor cortex in a state of continuous background activity. This mechanism is further explained by the work of developmental cognitive neuroscientist Dr. Adele Diamond. Her research demonstrates that the brain networks responsible for top-down cognitive control share structural pathways with the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. The regions responsible for balance, fine motor skills, and motor timing. When dopamine availability in these subcortical loops is low, your nervous system struggles to filter out unnecessary physical microsignals. The result isn't just an urge to move. It is an absolute physiological necessity. Clinical diagnostic guidelines, such as those outlined in the DSM-5 and the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, or NICE guidelines, frequently highlight hyperactive and impulsive behaviors in children. Yet, as adults age, these overt physical behaviors rarely disappear. Instead, they transform. The visible running and climbing of childhood internalize into subtle, continuous physical habits that often go unnoticed by clinicians, but remain deeply felt by you every single day. Have you ever noticed that you walk differently when you think no one is watching? Research published in Clinical Movement Studies and highlighted by psychiatric researcher Dr. Stephen Faraone reveals that adults and children with ADHD exhibit distinct patterns of gait variability and postural sway. When you walk down a quiet hallway, your stride width, step timing, and postural adjustments fluctuate far more than those of a neurotypical individual. You might find yourself subtly veering into door frames, clipping the edges of tables, or catching your shoulders on corners you thought you had clearly cleared. This is not simple clumsiness. It is a reflection of altered proprioception, which is your brain's internal GPS map of where your body exists in space. Because your brain is constantly allocating its limited executive bandwidth toward managing incoming thoughts and sensory data, it spends fewer real-time computational resources updating your spatial position. Your body relies on continuous feedback from your joints and muscles to maintain equilibrium. When your internal focus shifts rapidly, that spatial map loses high-definition clarity for a fraction of a second, causing you to misjudge a doorway by a single centimeter. You end up with mysterious bruises on your arms and thighs, unable to recall where or when you bumped into furniture. So let's walk through what happens inside your nervous system during a simple, everyday scenario. Imagine you are sitting in a quiet office chair, listening to a detailed presentation. To the outside world, you are simply sitting, But inside your body, a quiet struggle for stimulation is taking place. Your brain's default mode network begins to drift due to underarousal, dropping your baseline alertness below the threshold required to process information. To compensate, your nervous system initiates micro-fidgets. You shift your weight from your left hip to your right hip. You drum your fingernails against your knee. You adjust your posture, cross your legs, uncross them, tuck one foot underneath your thigh, and twist your ankle in slow, repetitive circles. Why does your body do this automatically? Because physical movement triggers a localized burst of sensory feedback that travels straight up your spinal cord and into your reticular activating system, the brain structure responsible for regulating wakefulness and arousal. Movement acts as an internal stimulant. When your brain lacks sufficient neurochemical stimulation from the environment or the task at hand, it forces your physical body to move in order to keep itself awake. You are not moving because you want to break the rules. You are moving so your mind doesn't go completely offline. This constant physical search for stimulation also explains why sitting normally in a chair often feels uncomfortable or unsustainable. You might find yourself sitting cross-legged, pulling your knees up to your chest, leaning over the side of the armrest, or constantly changing positions every few minutes. Your nervous system craves deep pressure input, known as proprioceptive feedback, to feel grounded in space. Without that feedback, sitting still creates a feeling of sensory drift, making you feel detached, restless, or inexplicably uncomfortable in your own skin. This constant physical calibration extends to your facial expressions as well. Many adults with ADHD experience what clinicians refer to as facial masking or expressive dysregulation. During moments of deep concentration, your face might appear completely neutral, flat, or even stern, a stark contrast to the intense rapid processing occurring behind your eyes. People around you might ask if you are angry, upset, or bored, when in reality your brain is simply devoting every ounce of energy toward processing information, leaving no bandwidth available to maintain a polite, social expression. Conversely, when an emotional or sensory trigger occurs, your micro-expressions can react with lightning speed before your prefrontal cortex has time to modulate them. A sudden flash of frustration, surprise, or boredom displays across your features instantaneously. You may have been told in the past that you wear your heart on your sleeve or that your facial reactions are too intense. But in reality, your facial motor pathways bypass executive filtering just like your leg taps and hand movements. Have you ever wondered why you feel physically exhausted at the end of a day where you barely left your desk? The answer lies in isometric tension. When you force yourself to sit still in environments that demand stillness, such as classrooms, formal dinners, or long work meetings, your nervous system doesn't simply turn off the urge to move. Instead, it converts dynamic movement into static muscular contractions. You tighten your thigh muscles, clench your jaw, press your tongue forcefully against the roof of your mouth, or squeeze your toes against the insoles of your shoes. You are holding your body in a continuous, rigid brace to prevent outward fidgeting. This unconscious physical bracing often leads to chronic neck stiffness, shoulder tension, tension headaches, and nocturnal teeth grinding, known as bruxism. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your body feels as though you have completed a strenuous physical workout. Because biologically, you have spent hours engaging your muscles in a hidden tug-of-war against your own nervous system. This leads us to a counterintuitive twist that changes how we understand physical restless behavior entirely. For decades, traditional views suggested that physical fidgeting was a distraction that ruined concentration. But landmark studies in clinical child psychology and adult neurodiversity have proven the exact opposite. Physical movement does not destroy your attention. Physical movement creates your attention. When researchers measured cognitive performance in individuals with ADHD while allowing them to move, fidget, or sit on dynamic therapy balls, their working memory performance and reading comprehension improved significantly compared to when they were forced to remain completely motionless. The physical motion provides the precise amount of nervous system arousal required to allow the executive centers of your brain to focus on complex mental tasks. Restraining your body actually consumes executive function that should be spent on thinking, problem-solving, or listening. When you force an ADHD brain to be physically still, you are demanding that it use its limited cognitive energy to monitor its own stillness, leaving almost no energy left over for actual thought. Fidgeting is not the problem, fidgeting is the solution your brain constructed to stay focused. Look at how this physical reality mirrors every corner of your daily life. You might find that you can only retain complex information while pacing around your room or listening to a podcast while walking. You might discover that you clean your kitchen or organize your desk best when you have music playing in the background. Using auditory sensory input to fulfill your body's physical craving for movement. You might catch yourself picking at the skin around your fingernails, spinning a pen, clicking a cap, or bouncing your knee while answering an important email. You might also notice physical sensitivities that others seem to ignore, such as an unbearable discomfort from rough clothing tags, tight waistbands, or specific fabric textures. Because your nervous system operates with lowered sensory gating, your brain processes physical sensations with heightened intensity. A tag that feels like a mild scratch to someone else can feel like sandpaper against your skin, constantly pulling your attention away from what you are trying to accomplish. These are not bad habits or hypersensitivities that need to be eliminated. They are adaptive physical reactions that your nervous system developed to navigate a world engineered for stillness and sensory uniformity. When you understand the neurobiological connection between your motor cortex, your basal ganglia, and your executive control systems, the narrative around physical restlessness changes completely. You begin to recognize that your body was never broken, chaotic, or ill-behaved. Your nervous system is simply built on a different operational model. One where thought and movement are permanently intertwined. So the next time you sit at your desk and feel your foot tapping a rapid rhythm against the floor, remember that you are not failing to sit still. Your nervous system is simply keeping you alive, aware, and engaged in a world that was never built for your motor rhythm.